damos la bienvenida al Conservatorio Superior de Música de la ciudad de Buenos Aires, Astor Piazzolla, en su espacio virtual. El Conservatorio es una institución pública y gratuita dependiente de la Dirección General de Enseñanza Artística del Ministerio de Cultura de la ciudad de Buenos Aires, en la que se imparte educación musical en los niveles inicial, medio, terciario y de posgrado. Toda la información sobre nuestras carreras, cursos, talleres y actividades artísticas las encontrás en nuestra página web o en las redes sociales.
La doctora Andrea Venet es percusionista, educadora y compositora en géneros contemporáneos y clásicos. Ejerce como profesora en la Universidad de North Florida, como solista internacional, música de cámara y clínica, y se mantiene activa en Europa, Japón y Trinidad. Como solista, sus apariciones recientes más destacadas incluyen el Steve Weiss Mallet Festival, Barnes Foundation, Filadelfia, el Celebrate Marimba Festival y en la Residence Prairie Music Residence Brass Bar, Canadá. Como solista, sus apariciones recientes más destacadas incluyen el Steve Weiss Mallet Festival, Barnes Foundation, Filadelfia, el Celebrate Marimba Festival y en la residencia de Prairie Music Residency Brass Band Canada. Además tuvo performances junto a Valerie Naranjo, Iván Trevino, el Lawson Ensemble, Project Trio y el Eastman Percussion Ensemble. Su dúo Escape Team permanece en la escena tocando con artistas internacionales. La investigación de Andrea incluye pedagogía, improvisación clásica y prácticas performáticas barrocas de Bach en la marimba. Las composiciones y los arreglos de Andrea se pueden encontrar en su página web www.andreavenet.com.
All right, bienvenidos a todos. Muchas gracias por estar acá. Bienvenida, Andrea Venet. Welcome, Andrea Venet. Estamos muy felices de tenerla acá, Andrea. Ella es, como ya habrán escuchado, súper de renombre y yo tuve el placer de conocerla hace no mucho tiempo en persona. Pero hoy la tenemos acá con nosotros, así que estamos súper felices y vamos a hablar de todo lo que está haciendo y de su carrera. I was just saying how excited we were to have you and that I've had the pleasure to meet you personally and that today we're having this conversation. We're going to talk everything about how you're doing. So how are you and where are you right now? ¿En dónde estás? ¿Cómo estás?
I'm great. Currently, I am living in Florida. I teach at the University of North Florida in Jacksonville, which is at the northeast corner of the state.
Dijo que está muy bien, que está al norte de Florida, en una ciudad que se llama Jacksonville, que está al noreste de el estado de Florida. Okay, awesome. So I have some questions prepared for you, and I'm gonna start with those. Le dije que tengo unas preguntas preparadas y la primera sería, ¿cómo crees que debería ser la formación del percusionista actual? Our first question would be, what do you think the education of today's percussionist should be like?
Well, that is a big question. I think percussion covers so many different instruments and so many different styles that definitely a well-rounded, comprehensive curriculum is important, and exposure to a bunch of different instruments and styles.
Dice, para el percusionista actual tiene un contacto con una variedad de cosas gigantes y a ella le parece muy importante que el currículum y el programa sea bastante abarcativo en cuanto a géneros y a muchos instrumentos. Do you want to tell us a little more about how your education works over there in percussion? Le pregunté si nos quería contar más sobre cómo es la educación de percusión en donde enseña ella.
Sure. Well, we have 4-year undergraduate degrees and then 2-year master's degrees and then 3 to 4-year doctoral degrees. And You can major in percussion performance or music education or things like Bachelor of Arts degree, music technology. So as a percussionist, there's a lot of different focuses that you can do and get a degree in. And if you want to teach college eventually, then you have to go through and do all 3 degrees and get a doctorate.
Bueno, nos explicó que allá el sistema tienen en primera instancia una licenciatura de 4 años, después una maestría y después un doctorado que dura aproximadamente 4 años más, y que en el sistema de allá para enseñar tenés que transcurrir esos 3 títulos, tenés que ser doctor para poder enseñar. So I was saying, you're Dr. Venet, right? Because you're teaching, because you've been through all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Ella es doctora Venet. And just curious, what was your doctoral research about? De curiosidad le pregunto, ¿de qué se trató su investigación como doctora?
Well, the degree I received was a doctorate in musical arts and performance and literature. Which includes a lot of performance-based courses and study and solo recitals, playing in ensembles, but then also there's a heavy research component where you're doing a lot of seminar-type classes. And so I also have a minor in pedagogy, as well as the degree in literature and performance. So I did the minor in pedagogy, which included improvising classes, some study in jazz vibraphone, and I did my final project in Baroque performance practice for Bach on marimba. And so that is a clinic and a big source of research that I've done a lot and carried with me in my teaching after that. And I can repeat any of this if I went on too long for you to translate.
Don't worry, you're good, you're great, that was perfect. Ella nos está diciendo que ella, su título de doctorado se especializó en la literatura del arte, que es la percusión, y para su capítulo final, para su investigación final, hizo una investigación enorme sobre Bach. Entonces ella aportó esas cosas mucho consigo misma para poder enseñar después, y también nos contó que tiene un minor, que sería como un pretítulo en pedagogía, entonces también enseña y tuvo que tomar clases de improvisación, de vibrafón de jazz y un montón de cosas, entonces sabe hacer un montón de cosas. All right, so actually another question I had prepared for you was, what would you recommend to someone who is beginning to study Bach on the marimba? Una de las preguntas que tenía para ella era, ¿qué le recomendaría a una persona que recién empieza a estudiar Bach en la marimba?
That's a really great question. And I think Bach is such a great body of repertoire that all different kinds of instrumentalists play and should study, that there's many, many interpretations and versions and arrangements that have been around forever. And the notes as they are laid on the page are very pleasing. So it's easy for it to sound really good no matter what kind of stylistic interpretation you are doing. I think my focus in my research was Baroque performance practice, meaning how did Baroque musicians play and interpret and improvise with this music, to have a better understanding of where they were coming from, since there's not a lot of information in the musical scores, that we're kind of just left guessing, or, most percussionists aren't Baroque experts. So my goal was to do research and kind of see what they were doing and what it might sound like, and how that is different than what the music looks like. And I'll pause there. I have more to say, but I'll pause there so you can...
Awesome, thanks. Nos estaba contando que todo el repertorio de Bach es algo que ella cree que es enorme, abarca un montón de cosas y que todos los instrumentistas deberían estudiarlo en algún momento. Las notas sobre la partitura son muy placenteras, entonces es relativamente sencillo de que suene bien, pero ella en su investigación se especializó específicamente en la práctica de cómo lo interpretaban en el barroco. Entonces la idea de ella era como entender de dónde estaban viniendo todos estos músicos que tocaron esta música para empezar desde sus orígenes, porque no todos los percusionistas somos especialistas en música barroca, entonces su idea era como aclarar un poco ese panorama y ahora nos cuenta un poco más de eso.
Okay, I'm not muted. And so I think the one thing that I have my students do when we first start doing Bach is we talk about, like, there's 4 major aspects that I think you need to understand, which are the affect of the piece, which is the character, that they believed every piece should have its own affect, and that it was your job to express that in a single movement. And then meter and tempo implications, what that means for the speed of the piece and what it's supposed to feel like. The third one is rhythmic manipulation, which can be ornamentation, arpeggiation. This was a big one. There's a lot of anything that you do that's different than what is written is under that big, rhythmic category, which includes rubato and freedom and flexibility, which is a big one that a lot of people, have discourse about on how to perform Bach. And I'm forgetting one. It's dissonance, meter and tempo, arpeggiation, dissonance. I'm sorry, dissonance is a really big one too. So dissonance, meter and tempo, the affect of the piece, and then rhythmic and tempo implications. And I could keep going, but I'll stop there so you can keep talking.
Nos está diciendo que ella con sus alumnos trabaja sobre 4 aspectos que a ella le parecen fundamentales. El primero sería las cuestiones emotivas, el efecto que tiene la obra sobre el oyente. Ellos creían que cada obra tenía que tener como una afectividad específica, entonces vos como intérprete tenés que expresar eso. Lo segundo sería una cuestión de tempo, interpretar bien la marcación de tempo. El tercero sería interpretaciones rítmicas, que eso abarca muchísimo, desde la ornamentación, el rubato, la manipulación de algunos ritmos, y ahí es donde muchos percusionistas tienen muchas discusiones sobre, bueno, cómo interpretar Bach. Muchos músicos tienen esa discusión. Y la cuarta dice que es disonancias. So you have those 4 main aspects, right? How do you continue after that?
Well, we talk about what those mean, and then we talk about what to listen to. And so I highly encourage my students to listen to Baroque musicians, meaning like lute players, because the lute is a Baroque instrument. And I think that is a really good place to start rather than going to the cello or violin suites, because the lute has a lot of inherent characteristics with the marimba. They're both chordal instruments. They're non-sustaining instruments like a cello or a voice. And the lute is plucked while the marimba is struck. So it has that sort of percussive quality. And so that translates to, I think, a percussionist's ear really well. And then also like listening to harpsichord, because the harpsichord is a chordal instrument that's non-sustaining as well. And just listening to Baroque musicians and how they treat groupings and phrasing and articulation, and how they made Bach feel sustained and sonorous on those instruments, I think in a lot of ways transfers really well to the marimba. And just listening to Baroque musicians play Bach, because it's going to be very different than listening to like Yo-Yo Ma play Bach.
Excellent, loved it. Dice que ella, bueno, primero habla con sus alumnos sobre qué significan estos 4 aspectos en específico, y después ella alienta muchísimo a que escuchen músicos barrocos interpretando estas piezas, que no saltes directo a los preludios de cello o las obras que están escritas para violín, porque ella hace una comparación, por ejemplo, con algunos instrumentos barrocos. Mencionó la flauta, pero también mencionó al laúd como un instrumento muy interesante para nosotros percusionistas escuchar, porque dice, bueno, la cuerda del laúd se pulsa, no se sostiene en el tiempo como una cuerda flotada, y un montón de otros aspectos que coinciden con la marimba en ese sentido. Entonces es muy interesante para los percusionistas escuchar directamente de esa fuente y cómo estos intérpretes hacen que la música de Bach suene tan sostenida con instrumentos que naturalmente no tienen un sustain tan largo. Awesome.
I'm impressed.
Thank you.
And I mean, so we talk about the 4 big categories and what that means, and then I can give some examples of that. I give them some good listening resources, and then a lot of times we start with the dance-based movement rather than the preludes. The cello suites are a very popular body of work by Bach that everybody plays, and the preludes in each suite are very good standalone sort of unique movements. But I think if you understand the parameters of dance-based movements, where things are a little bit more straightforward, where the feel and the groove is supposed to be, I've found that it's easier to go back and interpret a prelude where it's a little bit more free and improvisatory, the way that it has been composed, after understanding how to play a jig or a courant or a bourrée or something like that. So I found more success starting with the dance bass, where it's not reinventing the wheel and trying to figure out how fast it's supposed to be and how it is supposed to feel and how it's supposed to groove. And it's definitely, you know, there is a groove to Bach's music, and it's just all about how you carve out the details within strict time, which I think the concept of rubato and tempo flexibility is the biggest difference that you see between how people interpret Bach. So I think that's a big one with going the Baroque route, is just understanding how to manipulate rhythm and time.
Nos cuenta que ella con sus alumnos lo que suele hacer, en vez de saltar a los preludios de Bach, que son como las obras más populares y son como movimientos en sí mismos, ¿no? Por lo conocidos que son, ella prefiere encarar directamente una giga, una courante o cualquiera de esos movimientos que sean del baile, ¿no? Entonces, ella cree que con eso, primero aprendes el estilo barroco, y después, una vez que lo interiorizaste con los preludios, te podés tomar más licencias con el tema de la flexibilidad, del tempo y de todas esas cosas, que es en donde hay más diferencias entre los intérpretes. Ella cree que existe un groove en Bach y que es importante conocerlo, y que bueno, para poder tomarte las licencias de tiempo dentro de un momento estructurado, como licencias rítmicas en un momento estructurado, hay que conocer el groove y hay que saber cómo respetar ese marco de tiempo y las notas que hay en el medio. All right, anything else you want to say about all this?
It's a big topic, so I don't even start Bach until like second semester freshman year or sophomore year now. I let them sort of soak it in, you know, like watch me talk about it for a year and watch other students play it before I usually give out any Bach, because there's just so much to it.
Wow, nos cuenta que ella con sus alumnos no abarca Bach hasta segunda mitad de primer año o comienzo de segundo año, porque ella quiere que primero la escuchen a ella hablar del tema, que vean a otros alumnos más avanzados tocando esas piezas, y recién después de que lo absorbieron un poco, empiezan a encarar Bach, porque dice que hay mucho para ver y que hay como demasiado. Entonces, bueno, okay, so awesome. Let's move to the next question then. I feel like we've hit a great spot. Vamos a la siguiente... Vamos a la siguiente pregunta. La siguiente pregunta sería si nos podés contar alguna anécdota divertida o impactante de tu época estudiantil. The question is if you could tell us about some funny moment or impactful moment of your time as a student.
Well, there's a couple that stick out, but ones that are PG rated are, I think, every school that I went to, we had a shopping cart that we used to move percussion gear. In my undergrad, we had it because we had to move across campus for band rehearsal. And so when I went to get my master's degree at Rutgers, when we had to move gear, it was like, how are we going to move this around? So my roommate and I scoped out a abandoned shopping cart in a bush that was nowhere near the store it came from. And so we cased it, like we watched it for a couple weeks to make sure like it didn't belong anywhere, so we weren't like stealing it out of the parking lot. But one night late, after a couple beers, we we went to, and we put the shopping cart in my pickup truck and put it in the studio, and to move gear. And so to this day, it is still there. And then at Eastman, somebody moved, and they left a shopping cart in their garage, and we helped them move. And so there's also one at Eastman now too. So every school I've been to, we have, it's kind of silly, but it's really effective in moving percussion gear if you have to move around. So I think that's like one of the funniest stories I have.
So you like put shopping carts everywhere you go. I love it.
Have the money to buy a rock and roller fancy cart, it works great.
Awesome. Nos cuenta que ella en el lugar donde hizo su licenciatura para mover instrumentos de percusión en el campus usaban un carrito de supermercado, y de hecho cuando fue a estudiar su maestría, la universidad a la que iba no había carrito de supermercado, entonces ella con su compañera de habitación, su roommate, fueron a una plaza y vieron que había, a un estacionamiento, perdón, y vieron que había como un carrito de supermercado abandonado, entonces lo estuvieron como vigilando por 3 semanas a ver qué onda. Parece que el supermercado de donde vino estaba lejísimos, como que ya estaba súper abandonado. Entonces, después de 3 semanas, agarraron el carrito, lo pusieron arriba de una camioneta y lo llevaron al aula de percusión, porque es la manera más efectiva de trasladar instrumentos de percusión. Y bueno, después cuando fue a Eastman, también consiguieron un carrito de supermercado. Entonces eso, el carrito de supermercado a donde sea que vaya está. Okay, awesome. So you mentioned Eastman, and one of the questions we have for you is, what was it like studying with Michael Burritt and your experience at Eastman? La pregunta sería, ya que mencionó a Eastman, ¿cómo fue la experiencia de estudiar con Michael Burritt y la experiencia Eastman?
It was a really amazing experience. He's a very energetic and dedicated and virtuosic person and teacher, and so I respect him tremendously, which is why I wanted to go to school there, and I wanted to run my program modeled on how he runs his program. So I think it was, he's such a great musician and such a good motivator and a good leader that it was just set a really good example on what I want to strive to be as a teacher. But also he's innovative and writes his own music, which is something that I strive to do. And I think he really put me out of my comfort zone and really helped me take the next step in my musicianship and sort of thinking out of the box and being less literal about everything. And so I think that was my biggest takeaway is, especially after doing a lot of marching percussion stuff, where you're kind of focused on the literal things about music, he really pushed me beyond those parameters to kind of unleash the beast of my inner musician, I think, that, needed to kind of, come to the forefront, I suppose. I'll let you.
Nos cuenta que la experiencia con Michael. You're great, don't worry. You're giving me the perfect pauses. Le está diciendo que me está dando las pausas perfectas. Ella nos cuenta que la experiencia de estudiar con Michael Burritt fue increíble, que realmente ella siempre lo respetó muchísimo, no solo como músico, sino como compositor, porque también es muy innovador en el área, en ese sentido es muy conocido. Entonces, para ella fue una súper experiencia poder estudiar con él, y nos cuenta que ella, habiendo hecho mucha música de marching, en donde se toma todo muy literalmente lo que está escrito en la partitura, Michael la ayudó a ella a romper esos parámetros y a como liberar la bestia musical, la intérprete que tenía ella adentro. Entonces, ella realmente lo admira mucho y quería como calcar su programa de enseñanza basado en el programa de él, ¿no? De Michael. Entonces fue una súper experiencia. All right, so you mentioned that Michael Burritt creates his own music, and you do as well. So I wanted to ask you, how did your composing process start? Because I remember from when I saw you, that it was like a newish thing for you, and I would love you to tell us about that. No, le pregunté que, bueno, ya que Michael Burry compone, sé que ella también empezó a componer y quería preguntarle cómo fue eso, cómo sucedió, porque cuando yo la conocí nos contó que era algo nuevo en su camino. Entonces le quería preguntar cómo surgió eso.
So, Pauline she saw me when I really had first written a bunch of stuff and then performed it. That was really like the first, that was right after I had done that. So that's really funny. But I had always been arranging stuff for marching band, like writing percussion arrangements for that. And so I think that was how I started learning how to orchestrate things and put percussion music or hearing music and expressing that through the voices of percussion. And I think I was at a summer festival, and I remember I had been sitting and watching people do clinics and talk about and perform their own music, and I thought to myself, like, I think I could be doing this. And then I immediately thought about, I named like immediately 10 percussionists who compose and perform their own music and do it successfully. And I rattled 10 people off right away, and then realized that all of them were men, which is not bad, but it was just like, wow, it was like, I just had this realization. And so I was in a point where I was looking for music to play and trying to figure out what the next best marimba piece was, kind of with that student mentality, even though I've been teaching. And I was like, you know what, I gave myself permission to try it out and put on paper some of these ideas that I'd had in my head for a while and just never took the time to write down and actually flesh out. I'll pause there.
Nos cuenta que, bueno, yo justo cuando presencié su obra en vivo, ella recién había empezado a componer, fue como la primera obra que había puesto en papel. Bueno, ella antes de ese momento había estado participando como profesora en un montón de cursos de verano y cosas que se hacen allá, y hubo muchos percusionistas que hablaban sobre cómo componían, existen muchos percusionistas compositores, y dijo, bueno, voy a pensar en 10 percusionistas que componen, y pudo nombrar a los 10 inmediatamente, pero ni bien terminó de nombrarlos se dio cuenta de que eran todos hombres. Entonces, no es que era algo necesariamente malo eso, sino que le choqueó, dijo, ok, o sea, qué loco, o sea, puedo innovar algo acá. Entonces, bueno, ella estaba como muy en la mentalidad de estudiante de cuál es la próxima gran obra de marimba que quiero tocar, y dice que ella se tuvo que dar el permiso de empezar a proyectar en el papel las ideas musicales que tenía. Entonces, ahora nos cuenta más.
So I think in 2018 is when I had this epiphany. And so then I like went off the grid for 2 weeks, no social media, no phone, no email, nothing. And I wrote like 3 pieces and just got into a state of deep work. And so now I try to do that every summer, is just kind of like, unplug for a while, because it's a distraction. And when you're writing music, you have to, it's kind of like, I need long spats of time where you're not getting distracted. So I wrote 3 pieces, and then I premiered them at my recital that fall. And I just gave myself permission to do it and see how it goes. And so far, I had fun doing it, and it seems to be well received. And so now I've been commissioned a few times to write pieces, and I've started self-publishing on my website. And I do my own artwork for the most part for all of the pieces and stuff. And I've been able to do some projects and recordings with my students, which is really fun. So they get to premiere pieces, and I play with them all the time. And so a lot of percussionists have been doing this for a long time successfully. So, I just thought, well, why can't I do that too, And I think because I wasn't trained classically in composition, that was also part of the reason why I always thought I shouldn't be doing that, because I don't have composition degrees, but a lot of people don't. So I think the percussionist composer is a common thing now, so.
Nos cuenta que tuvo como esta epifanía de que tengo que empezar a componer en 2018, y se encerró por 2 semanas seguidas sin teléfono, sin internet, sin nada, como que entró en este estado de trabajo profundo, y en esas 2 semanas escribió 3 piezas completas, o sea, un tremendo. Y desde ese entonces cada verano hace lo mismo, como que entra en su zona de trabajo por 2 semanas, como diciendo que nadie me moleste, me meto en la composición a full. Y bueno, ella, como había dicho antes, se dio el permiso de poder hacer esas cosas, se dio el permiso de poder presentar sus piezas en sus recitales, y por suerte fueron súper bien recibidos. Ella también escribe varias cosas para sus estudiantes, entonces sus estudiantes también pueden tener la experiencia de estrenar obras, también le han comisionado a ella obras para que escriba, entonces viene siendo una experiencia súper positiva para ella. Okay, so before I jump to the next question, where can we hear this work until now, just so that people can know where to look for it?
It would be, everything is listed on my website, which is just www.andreavenet.com. And then if you go to sheet music, there is a link to purchase and watch the video. So if there is a video of each piece, it's on that. So you can figure out, you can watch the videos and read about them. And then if you wanted to purchase a score, whether it's my self-published or with Tapspace or something, there's links to every piece on the website, so it's all in one place.
Awesome. Nos cuenta que en su sitio web, www.andreavenet.com, pueden encontrar todas las piezas, tanto en video como en partitura, para poder comprar. Está todo disponible. Ella autopublica la mayoría de sus obras, a veces lo hace a través de Tapspace, pero ahí están todas las obras en un mismo lugar, si las quieren ir a escuchar, si las quieren comprar, las quieren interpretar, lo que sea, está todo ahí. Okay, so I remember I had the honor of listening to Green Ranger live, and I wanted to know, how was that composition process and why it's called Green Ranger and all that. Le dije, yo tuve el placer de escuchar en vivo una de sus composiciones que se llama Green Ranger, y quería preguntarle cómo fue su proceso compositivo, por qué lo llamó así, y etcétera.
It's so funny you ask about that piece, because it's sort of unique how that started. I literally woke up in the middle of the night with a rhythmic idea, which is the beginning. And I woke up and I remember like, oh, that's gonna start this piece. And so I think I voice recorded it really quietly so I didn't wake up my husband. And it was just weird how that happens sometimes. And then I sat down and I wrote it pretty quickly. Like everything just kind of, I had the beginning envisioned. I wanted it to be a really energetic, fun piece for vibraphone with percussion ensemble, which there's not a lot of pieces for vibraphone as the solo instrument. And so I wanted to have a fun, bold energy to it. And so I started with the opening lick, and then it kind of worked itself out. I knew what the energy I wanted it to be, and so that just kind of took care of itself. And I have a green vibraphone, which is right there. And its nickname is the Green Ranger, named after the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers from like the 90s, which was like, you know, a kid's TV show. So since the vibraphone's name is Green Ranger, and I, you know, wrote a piece for a vibraphone, that's where the silly names comes from.
Nos cuenta que Green Ranger es una obra escrita para vibráfono solista y ensamble de percusión, y no hay muchas obras escritas para vibráfono solista en ese contexto, y ella soñó con la primer frase, lo que abre la obra, lo que nos cantó antes, ese motivo que soñó, como que se despertó y dijo, listo, esto va a empezar esta obra, y quería que fuera como una obra energética, una obra divertida, en la que haya como mucha energía en el grupo. Entonces, teniendo como en cuenta ese estado de energía, el resto de la obra como que se escribió por sí sola después de ese motivo que ella había creado. Y bueno, tiene un vibrafón verde que nos acaba de mostrar, Y bueno, Green Ranger es el apodo que tiene ese vibráfono en nombre a el Power Ranger verde de la serie de televisión que todos conocemos y vimos de chicos. That's really funny. I watched Power Rangers when I was young, so yeah. Todos vimos Power Rangers, nos encanta. Bueno, tengo unas preguntas más para ella. Una pregunta súper importante que le quiero hacer, ya que dirige ensamble de percusión en UNF, sería ¿cuál cree que es el impacto de los ensambles de percusión en los escenarios de hoy en día? My next question for you, since you direct a percussion ensemble and this festival is kind of all about percussion ensembles in general, what do you think is the impact of ensemble percussions on the stages, on the musical stages of nowadays?
That's a great question. I think the percussion ensemble is really, really important for several reasons. First, I think it really gives percussionists a chance to gain skills on a lot of different instruments in a meaningful way, as opposed to often, especially in younger groups, they're in the back of the orchestra or the band, and they might not be playing as many things, or they might not be playing as actively as the rest of the ensemble. So I think percussion ensemble, even at early ages, is really, really important because it gives them a sense of ownership, and they're making meaningful music with other people and learning how to, make decisions on their instrument and think about sounds. And, you're essentially a soloist most of the time in percussion ensemble, where everybody's kind of playing different things. So it gives you some identity, your own part, your own sound. You're essentially a soloist a lot of the time. I also think that chamber music skills is really, really important, whether that's 2 people or 6 people, and being able to communicate. And there's a lot of really great music for that. And then lastly, I think having that sort of experience in percussion ensemble really helps percussionists play in larger ensembles. So when they go be in the orchestra or when they're in the wind ensemble, they're only better in the back of the room for the director, and they're getting good sounds, and they know how to play together, and they can kind of clean up any issues because they're just more aware as ensemble musicians. And I've seen that direct impact on how that benefits large ensembles.
That's really cool. I never thought of it that way. Nos cuenta que ella le parece que el ensamble de percusión hoy en día tiene un lugar muy importante para la formación del percusionista, especialmente para chicos que recién empiezan o que son más jóvenes. Si estás en el fondo de una orquesta y capaz no tocas tan seguido los instrumentos, capaz el sentido de la identidad como percusionista se diluye un poco más, mientras que en el ensamble de percusión ella cree que casi todos los integrantes son solistas a su propia manera. Entonces, no solo tenés que aprender a generar otro tipo de sonido, sino que también vas conociendo un montón de instrumentos de percusión, como que realmente abarcas un montón de cosas, y ella cree que el percusionista que transita esta experiencia de ensamble de percusión después beneficia a los grupos que son más grandes, como la orquesta. O sea, el percusionista que pasó por un ensamble de percusión de repente tiene un sonido mucho más grande en una orquesta o cosas así. Y estas mismas capacidades habla con respecto a la música de cámara. A ella le parece muy importante cómo comunicarse con los otros instrumentistas, saber cómo tocar con otros, y todos esos grupos pequeños terminan beneficiando a los grupos grandes, y ella fue testigo de ese paralelismo directo. All right. So, what was the most important experience, or what's the most impactful moment as a teacher of percussion ensemble with your ensemble? Like, if you could tell us a story or a really great memory or something like that, that would be really cool.
Like with my students? Like,
yes.
As a
yeah. Le pregunté si como profesora nos podía contar, profesora de su ensamble de percusión en la Universidad de North Florida, nos podía contar algún momento impactante o lindo o importante que tuvo en esta experiencia de ensamble de percusión.
This is a big question. I think I have 2 moments that stand out, if that's okay. The first one is During my first year teaching at UNF, I conducted and programmed Lou Harrison's Labyrinth, which is a large percussion orchestra piece that is conducted. There's, I think, 11 or 12 players. It's not officially published, so you have to go to like, there's a special like museum or organization that holds the score, and you have to rent it, but you can't just purchase it. It's something I played in my undergrad, and we did at the Percussive Art Society International Convention, so we performed it there. I always remembered it was really cool. It was something that I'd wanted to do, so I programmed it my first year at UNF, the last semester, which was also, I think, the year of Lou Harrison's, it would have been his 100th birthday. So it was the centennial of his birth, and so that all worked out. And so that was a really challenging work for me to like put together. You know, it's a big piece of music, so that was cool to conduct that and to expose the students who were my new students to kind of this music and why it was important, because he's a composer I really love. And I'll pause there before I tell you the second one.
What was the name of the piece? I'm sorry.
It was called Labyrinth.
Labyrinth. Ella tuvo una experiencia, nos va a contar dos experiencias. La primera es que con su ensamble de percusión tuvieron la oportunidad de tocar en el PASIC, en el evento internacional del Percussive Art Society, y tocaron esta obra Labyrinth de Lou Harrison, que es una obra gigante para un armado enorme como una orquesta de percusión. Entonces tanto sus estudiantes más pequeños como los más grandes pudieron tener como esta experiencia maravillosa, que aparte, justo de casualidad, ese año se cumplían los 100 años del nacimiento del compositor, entonces es como que todo cerró de una manera hermosa, y fue un desafío porque es una obra realmente grande. Entonces, bueno, ahora nos va a contar la segunda.
I have one funny thing that has to go with that before I talk about my second favorite moment is in Lou Harrison's Labyrinth, you have to bow a saw that you use to like cut wood that has like the sharp teeth on it. So you bow that with a bass bow to get like high-pitched woo sounds. And I was playing the saw in my undergrad when we played this piece, and I needed to rosin my bow, and my teacher threw the rosin at me while I was holding the saw. And I went to catch it and ended up trying to catch the saw because it fell. And so I have a scar on my hand from the saw. And it's like, to this day, it's like, I think a story that my former teacher, J.B. Smith from Arizona State, remembers, because he was just, you know, he was like so concerned, but I was totally fine and I could still play marimba, so that was good. But that's a fun memory from my first time playing that piece. I have a scar from it. So I remember that and tell that to my students when we performed that piece.
Oh my God, that's so extreme. Nos dice que antes de contarnos la segunda anécdota, se acordó que ella, cuando fue estudiante de la licenciatura, antes de enseñar esta pieza, hay un momento en el que con un arco tenés que frotar una sierra. Y como tenía que ponerle mucha resina al arco, y ella se lo había olvidado, su maestra le tiró la resina desde afuera del escenario, y como que soltó la sierra, la quiso agarrar a la resina y se cortó la mano con la sierra. Entonces es al día de hoy que sigue teniendo una cicatriz con respecto a esa performance, y por suerte estuvo todo bien, no le pasó nada grave, pero su profesor se había preocupado muchísimo. Entonces, bueno, nos contó eso, que fue tremendo con respecto a esta obra. Entonces hoy en día le recuerda a sus alumnos: chicos, lleven la resina.
I guess that should have been my funny story, is that I have a saw scar.
Bueno, me parece que se trabó el internet de nuestra invitada, cosas que pueden pasar. La vamos a esperar. Doctor, can you hear me? Me parece que Bueno, vamos a esperar un segundito a que se conecte nuevamente. Gracias por la paciencia. Mientras tanto, saben que me pueden hacer llegar sus preguntas, si tienen ahí disponibles. Ni bien se vuelva a conectar la doctora Venet, vamos a hacerles esas preguntas. Hello, you back? Le pregunté si está, porque veo que se conectó al Zoom. Yay, you're back!
Sorry, I'm so sorry. My computer failed.
That's fine, don't worry. We're so glad you're back and that you're okay. Le dije que no pasa nada, son cosas que pueden suceder. Estamos felices de que volvió. Okay, so do you remember what your second part of the story about the ensemble, the question you were going to tell me about?
Sure, I think one of my proudest moments was when 3 of my students played at the PASIC 2019 chamber percussion competition. They played Oko for 3 djembes by Yanis Xenakis, which is a super contemporary work. It's really cool, it's really hard. And we'd been working on it, they were playing it really great, and we made a last minute decision to join the competition. And it's like, well, can we get on a plane with 3 djembes? You know, but yeah, sure, let's do it. So it's not something we've been like planning on doing all semester and like working hard towards. They just, you know, did a great job, and they got second place, and they played beautifully, just playing the one piece for 3 loud djembes. So that was like a proud mama bear moment, because they really did a beautiful job with that.
That's so beautiful. Congratulations. Uno de sus estudiantes en una de las competencias de música de cámara del PASIC 2019 concursaron tocando Oko, una pieza de Yanis Xenakis para 3 djembes, y bueno, de repente surgieron estas cosas del armado, como bueno, pero ¿podemos llevar 3 djembes en un avión? Como que se hicieron un montón de preguntas, pero por suerte parece que lo tocaron súper bien, salieron en segundo lugar del concurso, así que un espectáculo. Y con eso cerramos la pregunta anterior que había quedado colgada. Okay, so I have 1 or 2 last questions to just round it off. And we haven't talked yet about Escape 10. Maybe you wanted to tell me about how the group was formed, some of the most important moments of your career together. Me di cuenta de que no le pregunté todavía acerca de Escape 10, que es su dúo de percusión, y quería preguntarle, bueno, cómo se formó el grupo, si nos quería contar algún momento importante o algo al respecto de ese dúo.
So Escape 10, we started the duo in 2012, and Annie and I went to school together at Rutgers for our master's degree, which is where we met and first started playing together. And we always got along and had a fun time performing together. And actually my marimba took its first car ride home from the Maltec factory in her Ford Escape, which is a funny story. So later on, after we'd parted ways for a couple years, she got a job in Virginia where I was living at the time with my husband. So we decided to start a duo and do a cross-country road trip for 3 weeks from coast to coast and set up concerts as kind of like let's see if this works and let's do this road trip. And if we can do this, then it's meant to be. So we did that.
and we had a blast and played a bunch of concerts across the country. And that's what established the duo. So the name comes from Escape 10 is a Ford Escape, is the car, her car that we drove across the country in on the I-10, which is a freeway that goes all the way across the United States. And that's how we started in 2012.
Escape 10 empezó en 2012. Nada, ella se encontró con su compañera de dúo, se conocieron en la maestría estudiando juntas y bueno, nos cuenta que cuando empezó el dúo se estableció haciendo una gira que cruzaba todo Estados Unidos. Entonces, bueno, el punto es que Escape Ford era el auto que usaron en esa super gira que hicieron de costa a costa con un montón de conciertos y I-10 era la autopista que manejaron para esa gira. Entonces, así se llama el dúo. Okay, so I have a few questions from the audience, and we will be, these have to be kind of quick because our time is running out. I'm so sorry, but okay. So the questions are, is your research available? Like, are your papers available on the internet? Because apparently someone said that the only one that they've seen is on, oh no, sorry, that's the question. La pregunta era si la investigación está disponible en algún lugar en internet.
I think as an academic professor who's a performer as their main thing, research renders itself as publications and compositions and arrangements. So as far as like when I'm filling out my CV and going for promotion and tenure, research is shown by articles written and pieces of music written and published and commissions. So my Bach research is a lecture recital that I give often, and I have handouts with that. And then I have published arrangement of the Fifth Suite merged with the Lute Suite, which was the piece I did my research on when I did this lecture recital. And so I did write a paper for myself, but it's not published anywhere. But I have published the arrangement with annotated notes and have Bach like arrangements published as far as that goes. And I've written a few articles for percussive notes on marimba rolls and rehearsing percussion ensemble. And then I did a rhythm scene article a while ago. But with the DMA from Eastman, you have to do the comprehensive exams, which is a grueling test, and then a lecture recital where you're doing research and performing and talking about a topic. But you do not have to do a dissertation and write a huge paper like you do at other institutions. So there isn't one like floating around on the internet, but all the creative things I do are a reflection of my research.
Cuenta que para recibir el doctorado su investigación tuvo que estar reflejado en una especie de performance de todo lo que ella investigó mientras lo hablaba al respecto. Entonces ella no escribió un paper per se, como lo tiene para sí misma, pero no está publicado en ningún lado, sino como que todas estas experiencias están publicadas en sus arreglos de obras de Bach, en sus conciertos, y de hecho toda su tesis, ella la tiene como una masterclass, como si fuera una cosa que ella presenta como concierto a veces. Entonces, ahí pueden encontrar todo eso. Okay, so our last question is, you said you've had experience in marching, and what kind of studies do you use for the drumline on mallet instruments? ¿Qué tipo de estudios practican en la drumline en placas? Ella ya nos contó que tuvo experiencia en marching, así que nos va a contar.
I think my marching percussion experience impacted me the most with technique. My teachers who taught me when I was doing marching percussion had a really strong background in marimba, and they studied with Lee Howard Stevens and went to the marimba seminar. So luckily, everything I learned was the same concepts, whether you're outside or inside. And there's a lot of adaptations, I guess, that has happened since I marched, which was, 2002, a long time ago. So I think just the way to work on technique and to clean and to analyze how your hands are working was a really good takeaway and sort of teaching technique and talking about touch. And I also think that the discipline that you get from doing that activity also can really help you no matter what percussion instrument you're playing on, especially if you're playing something that's technically challenging as a solo or with other instruments. And also that helps to build, doing marching stuff helps develop your hands and your chops. And so I feel like my hands have stayed in really good shape, even though it's many years later, just because you spend so many hours analyzing and having somebody look at your hands constantly. So I think that mentality is really important. And then you just pair it with musicianship and sound by yourself inside.
Nos cuenta que en el marching se aborda muchísimo lo que es la técnica, el toque, el tipo de sonido, si está para afuera o para adentro. Ella cree que todo el tema técnico y todo el tema de la disciplina de poder, de tener como a alguien realmente revisándote todo el tiempo la mano, cómo está posicionada, la disciplina de tener que tocar quizá un extracto que sea técnicamente muy difícil, y que la gente te esté insistiendo en eso, son todas cosas que ella lleva de su experiencia en tocar el marching a lo que toca hoy en día. Creo que esos son los focos como más importantes de haber atravesado esa experiencia. Okay, Andrea, I just wanted to thank you so much. This interview has come to an end. I would like you to tell everyone who's watching where we can find you on all social media before we say goodbye, like YouTube, Facebook, whatever. Que estaba agradeciendo muchísimo, pero antes de que nos vayamos de esta entrevista, quería que Andrea nos comparta en dónde la pueden buscar en todas las redes sociales.
Well, first I want to say thank you so much for having me as part of this festival, and it's so nice to see your face, Pauline. It's been a few years, yeah. And well, it seems so much longer since it's 2020 and it's crazy this year. But it really means a lot to be part of this festival. So thank you so much for having me and for doing a flawless job on the translation. I'm very impressed. I am on Instagram. Dr. Glocken AV is my handle, where I'll post stuff of me playing of my English bulldog. She's on there too. I have a Facebook page. It's just Andrea Venet, and I have a YouTube channel, which if you go to my website, it has videos embedded that will take you to my YouTube channel, where there's videos of chamber performances, of stuff that I've written, solo works, of my students playing. And so I think Instagram and YouTube are the most active, the ones that I use the most. And my duo Escape 10 just released an album called Our Favorite Things with Ravello Records, which we're really proud of. It's got works by Michael Burrett and Joe Locke and John Sathis, who's from New Zealand, Aurel Hollow, who's in Amadenda from Hungary. Who am I forgetting? I don't want to forget anybody. Kelly Rossum, who is a jazz trumpet player, and Ivan Trevino. There's a piece on there, 2300. And so we're really proud of this album, put a lot of work into it. So you can find that on Spotify and Amazon and CD Baby, and iTunes is through all the channels. So I would encourage you to check that out because it's pretty cool, I think.
Definitely we will. Nos cuenta, bueno, su Instagram es drglocken, AB corta, Dr. Glockenav. En Facebook la pueden encontrar como Andrea Venet, pero dice que Instagram y YouTube es lo que más tiene activo. En Instagram tiene fotos hermosas de su bulldog inglés, así que vayan a seguirla. Y hace muy poco, con su dúo que estuvimos hablando, Escape 10, acaban de sacar un álbum que tiene una cantidad de composiciones muy tremendas, tanto de Michael Burry, de Ivan Trevino, de John Satas, de bueno, un montón de personas, y ella nos invita a que vayamos a escuchar este disco que sacaron hace muy poco, que lo pueden encontrar en Spotify, iTunes, bueno, todas las plataformas máximas. Nos agradeció mucho también por ser parte del festival, me agradeció a mí por la entrevista y la traducción, y yo les quiero agradecer a todos los que estuvieron presentes acá. Thank you so much, Andrea. I can't wait to see you again. This has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.